All right. So before we go to my new friend, Sammy. So I recently had a show, and on the show, I was talking to somebody about with a newborn, with a kid. And no, I was someone who was about to have a kid or was considering having a kid. Was that what it was?
Yeah, it was the guy that was nervous about having a kid.
There you go. Okay. And I made the statement, you will never truly know the depths of your ability to love until you hold your first child. And usually Instagram, like social media, is one of two things. It's like, yeah, bro, you go, girl. Or it's, you're the worst person ever, and I would like to set you on fire. And then occasionally I get really thoughtful, what I would say thoughtful, good engagement, like pushback. Like, I disagree with that. Occasionally my friends, like Dr. Norton, will call me and be like, hey, you botched that one big time. Here's the reality. But I sometimes will get some thoughtful pushback. And this particular time was someone I've never met, never talked to. I'm about to hear, but it was Sammy from Indiana. And she reached out and was super kind. And so, Sammy, I'm going to bring you in here. Sammy, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Dude, number one, thank you so much for even agreeing to be on the show and to talk this through. I want to tell you out of the gate, I'm so grateful that you had the courage to write in and say, I think I disagree with what you're saying. And I that meant the world to me, how you did it, why you did it. And you gave some great rationales. Like I could tell that you were not just throwing grenades. And so on behalf of humanity, who's all stuck in this Instagram-y world, thank you for being a good human. How are you?
Yeah, no problem. I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. Okay, so I reached out back to you and said, hey, I would love to talk about this on the show because I know this particular conversation is being had all over the place. And it's a part of a broader conversation I've been struggling with as I'm trying to write a new book and try to dig into some of the scholarship around this stuff. So for everybody listening, walk us back through, I make the statement on the show. You'll never truly know the depth of your ability to love, the depths of love, until you hold your first kid. And you heard that, and you're in our gang. And tell me how that hit you. What you felt, what you thought. Walk me through that. And
yeah, so
don't spare my feelings, by the way. Let it rip, okay?
Okay, yeah. So I've been listening to every episode you've come out with, and it's just been a great place for me to connect on different topics in my life that I've been going through. And so I really respect you and what all you have to say, and I really take everything that you say to heart. So when you said that, it kind of broke my heart a little bit, just because I hear a lot of that talk in the world saying, like, you'll never know love until you have a kid. And I think it just puts a lot of other people who don't have kids into this weird situation where we're less than.
So tell me, so my wife and I struggled with infertility for years and years. And so I get that impulse. Tell me why it makes you feel less than.
Because it feels like people think you're only important if you have kids and you won't contribute anything else into the world unless you have kids.
Where does that story come from?
I think I mostly hear it from parents.
Okay.
Yeah. So a little backstory. Me and my husband have been married for almost 7 years.
Okay.
And we always nonchalantly would say that we would have kids. But that always just got pushed back and back and back. And then my sister, I have an identical twin sister. She had her first kid in 2020. And so that's when everyone started bombarding me with, oh, when are you guys going to have kids? And that's kind of when we started, really thinking, like, is this something we actually want to do? Because it's a huge, major decision that I think a lot of people just don't take the time to think about a lot. So that's just what we've been thinking about for the past couple of years and trying to make that decision. So
how has that, as y'all land on the decision of, are we going to do this or are we going to not? How is that? How are you feeling pulled in a less than position?
Just the way that like some parents and some other people talk to people who don't have kids. It's like, oh, well, you think you're tired? Well, try being up with a newborn, and like always trying to one up people who don't have kids or think that, oh, you're not going through anything hard in your life.
Or you don't, yeah, I'll give you something to cry about, right? Yeah. Okay. So a couple of thoughts here. I absolutely remember that. And I remember walking past a room in our house, and we had made the decision to have kids and we couldn't, right? So, but we also didn't want to announce that to the world. I remember having a hard conversation with a family member and who said, hey, we've made some decisions because y'all clearly don't want kids. And it was like a knife to the soul, dude. You know what I mean? Because I was like, well, hold on. Like, just because, you know what I mean? You made all these suppositions about me and my wife and our family. And so, yeah, that's brutal. And I want you to hear me say, like, loud and clear, there is no less than, right? It's just simply different. But I will say this. My wife and I were talking, and she said something once when she was first pregnant with Hank, and it stuck with me. And then I circled back to it when she was, we went another several years and had a couple of wild surgeries and wildness. One life-saving surgery, and then we ended up with Josephine. She said, I feel sorry for you. This is her talking to me. I said, why? And she said, you will never know how close I am to our son. I was like, yes, I'm his dad. And she goes, no, dude, he's been in my body for 9 months. You'll never know. You'll never know how close I am breastfeeding the kid. In the middle of the night, just us two, you're snoozing like an old man. And I had to, there was a moment of, yeah, you're exactly right. I'm never going to know that. And it doesn't mean that I was less than or that I was dysfunctional or broken, but it just was, right? And so what I'm wrestling with, and you can, I'm hoping you can teach me, I'm wrestling with, how do I absorb truth? In my life, dude, I had a dog. Her name was Molly. She was a basset hound. She was my hound dog. She slept on my pillow with me. The joke in my house was she was in my bed long before my wife was. Like that dog was my ride or die. I brought her to meetings. I brought that dog everywhere. And I loved that dog. I loved my friends dearly. And then I held my first kid. And so I don't feel like I'm in a place where I can honestly say I understood what that meant until, and at the same time, how do I communicate that without inferring that it's somehow better than? It's just is, right? Like some pools are 3 feet deep, some pools are 20 feet deep. Depending on what you want to do with your life, pools are going to be different, but I can't deny that pool's 20 feet deep. So how do I, is it something that you have to own, that I'm not going to let people make me feel less than? Is it something that I need to own when I'm communicating? Is it something we need to do it together? How do we have that conversation?
I think it's both parties. The one side who is the child-free couple, like being firm in their stance and saying like, this is what we want. Like we won't feel bad for it. But then I think on the other side, it's for people to accept that and to not, feel bad for them or think they're less than, or like when you said you won't truly know love until you hold your kid. There are other ways to love people.
Absolutely.
Like that's not the only form of love. Like I understand it's a different love. So I think just for people who have kids, not totally summarizing something and equating that to kids.
So maybe a better way to say it was, you won't ever know the depth of your capacity to love until you hold your first kid. But that doesn't mean you're not going to love deeply and wildly and recklessly. And so there's different. Yeah. So I can see where I said that incorrectly, because I made a blanket statement about love. You'll never know love until you've done this. That's not true.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. So on behalf of myself, I apologize for saying it that way, because I made a blanket statement about the nature of love that just simply was inaccurate. And I think I should have said it differently and said, and you guys listening, I'm processing this in real time. I should have said, there's a depth and a capacity to love that you won't understand until you're responsible for, or till you hold somebody. But that doesn't mean you're not ever going to love, right? You're going to have your spouse, you're going to have your friends, you're going to have your pets, you're going to have whatever. You're going to love all sorts of people. Yeah, that makes sense. I love that. Okay, so how do you, on your side, how do you create a world where other people don't get a vote, or very select few people get a vote?
I have just learned to have really tough skin over the past couple of years, and
is that a sustainable? Is that a sustainable way to live? That seems like an exhausting way to live.
No, I think it was more exhausting letting other people have the freedom to my emotions. And so over the years, like the past couple of years, because I've gone through a lot of hard things in my life, I've learned to, what emotions do I allow to each person? And that, okay. The whole kid subject is one of them, because I know that some people will say dumb stuff because they just don't know. Yeah. They don't know the situation I'm in. So I let that slide. But then, when someone does know my stance and you keep, saying the same stuff, then I think that's where the education comes in.
Could I recommend, instead of looking to form calluses, because here's what I think. When I think I'm forming calluses, the image in my head is of a tightening fist. I'm becoming hard and strong to this, instead of opening my hands even wider and letting that kind of stuff pass through me like air, like a spirit, right? I'm going to make my way through life not trying to be calloused as much as I'm going to let that pass through me like wind. Like that's not even a thing. You can say whatever you want, and that's not going to affect my mood, or my body's not going to feel like it has to respond in some sort of Does that make sense? One of those feels like a lot of work, and the other feels like a infinitely less anxious way to live.
Yeah, I don't think I'm necessarily like callousing myself off to people, but I have grew up as a kid who was very emotional and was, let my parents really control those emotions. And so as an adult, I've had to learn, what do I allow people into?
Well, good for you.
And how do I respond to things?
Awesome. Did you read that Own Your Past, Change Your Future, that book I wrote?
I started to, and then my husband took it and he started reading it and gave me some cliff notes.
Good job. So I want you to hang on the line. I want you to read it. There's a story in that book about my friend Lisa, who was in one of my counseling cohorts, and I'll end this call this way. We were sitting in a circle, and I've told this story on the show before. We were sitting in a circle as counseling classes do, and we were talking about different scenarios, different case studies, and one of my great mentors and friends and professor, Dr. Brett Hendricks, he laid out a case study, and the case study was, what happens if you've been working with a client for like 6 months, and the client walks in and looks at you and says, "Hey, you suck at this. You've taken my money for 6 months. I've paid you thousands of dollars. I did your little exercise with my romantic partner, and she left me. I did your little how to ask for a raise exercise, and my boss, and not only didn't give me the raise, but gave me like a reprimand. You're not good at what you," and I was new to it, right? I was just seeing clients in my practicum, and I remember saying out loud, that would kill me. That would decimate me. And Lisa, who's one of the most wise, she's just awesome. She's brilliant. She's been a therapist for years and years and years. She looked at me and said, "John, they don't get that." And I rolled my eyes and I was like, "Oh gosh, is that one of the dumb counselors speak?" And she said, magic words, "You get to choose who hurts your feelings." And I was like, "No, that's not right." And she goes, "Yeah, other people can take away your livelihood." Or actually on the way home, I was thinking about this. Other people can take away your livelihood. They can take away, they can wreck your car. They can take your job away. They can take your life away. But I get to choose who I give access to my heart in order to hurt me. And I asked her, I was like, "Oh, so how many people do you give access to your heart?" I was just rolling my eyes. And she said like 4 or 5 or 6, something like that. A very small number. And so on my bike ride home, I'll never forget this. It was a hot West Texas afternoon. The wind was blowing. It was just hot, and I was riding my bike, and I was frustrated, and I was trying to think, who would I allow in this little magical box? And I realized I was allowing everybody. I was allowing all my students' parents, all these administrators, all these people at other universities I didn't know who were colleagues. I was letting internet people. I was letting all kinds. So I just started whittling it down. I took my parents out, and who I love. I love my parents, but I took them out of the box. I took my in-laws out. I took all these different people, and I got down to 4 or 5 or 6 people. And I remember calling a couple of them and said, "Hey, I just want you to know I've given you access to my innermost being. Use it wisely, please. Because if you tell me like, hey, you're being an idiot or you're being foolish or you've made a terrible mistake, I'm gonna respond in kind because I trust you." And I'll tell you this: it was the single most freeing exercise I've done in years. I felt like I was free. If my wife tells me something, if my buddy Todd tells, like very select group of people, if they tell me something, I'm in. Right. Other than that, people just don't get a vote. And I'll tell you, it's like I was describing, it's like opening your hand up to the world and letting it just be. So I want to thank you for being so thoughtful and kind in your response and for calling me out and saying, hey, I experience love all over the place and I don't have kids. And so what you said isn't accurate. It doesn't hold true. And the way I said that, I still hold to my belief that the capacity for love deepens when you hold your kid, but it's just simply dishonest to say will never know love, right? That's just not true. And so I want to thank you for calling me out in such a dignified and respectable way. And I really appreciate you, Sammy.
Yeah, thanks for being able to listen to all that too. I know some people don't, but thanks for being open to it. Of
course, man. And hang on the line here, and we're going to get you a copy of the book. And that way your husband won't steal your crap anymore. He can get his own. How kind will that be? Awesome. Sammy, you're the best.